Welcome back to the Think Strong pod.
Here we are.
We're back from a long layoff of about 20 minutes.
Yeah, important respite.
Yeah, it's been good. I've got myself some caffeine. Aaron's overstimulated, so he's not had any. But
yeah, I need to keep this bowel movement to a minimum.
intact. It's good. Yeah, we're going to touch on weightlifting in this episode. Where do we start? We're going to talk through positions, mobility, strength, skill, top-down method, bottom-up method, who's in front of you, who's not. Do you know what I mean? All of the ins and outs. So yeah, talk from your own experience, like where do you start or where do we start?
From a model perspective.
Yeah.
I always, similar to the Bergener method, always go from the top down and teaching people the ollie lifts. Normally the high hang, whether that's the high hang muscle, high hang power clean, and yeah, like high hang power or muscle snatch as well. Reason being, it gives a really good understanding of just taking out the moving parts when we look at the high hang compared to the more dynamic lift from the floor. It takes out the moving parts and gives you a really good understanding when you do it correctly, how you can feel how your lower body is the main driver of everything and how a lot of the time your upper body is facilitating that power that you have exerted into the ground. And a lot of the time when you're teaching someone, first thing you're looking for is them to get that understanding of lower body to upper body, in my experience.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Through like my experience from a coaching on the floor perspective, like through a lot of weightlifting coaching over the last 3 years, it's kind of the easiest way to teach somebody or start them in a group setting with minimal experience. Like you said, the ability to use their legs first and understand that. But more so like as like a safe area to work within. I think when we think about weightlifting, we think about like the mobility they need, which is strength in end ranges, not just flexibility, skill, and then strength, which would be kind of intensity, adding load after those things are intact. Now, I understand like starting from the bottom method as well, like teaching somebody a full clean or a full snatch, just like straight from the off. But if they don't have the prerequisites of the other two, like they might be really flexible, but they might not have any strength in their end range. So, and you could argue that they're starting with a lighter bar, but it's still force in a deep joint angle, isn't it? And the coordination that it requires as well. So I think from that perspective, like for me, it's the better of the two options to begin with. That would also depend on where the person comes to you. Like, do you know what I mean? If you have an online client coming to you and they've been cleaning and jerking and snatching for a while from the floor, you're not gonna like that. You might take them to the top to improve a deficit they have. Like they might not understand how to move through that part of the lift, like through the second pull into the third pull. But you probably wouldn't take out all of the bottom. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's actually an interesting point, to be honest, because I do think the high hang is so valuable for people that are intermediate to advanced as well. And when I'm taking someone on board and if they don't have a glaringly obvious weightlifting deficit and there's not something that we're directly working towards where we need that exposure from the floor straight away, there will always be an element of high hang work in there, because I think it's so valuable to actually really teach you how to finish that extension with your lower body and get the most out of it, because it's so often that yes, people might be a sufficient or proficient weightlifter from the lower positions and they can, at first glance move well, but there's so much to be had by relearning to use your legs properly in the final part of your extension and how that ties in with slightly lower positions after that. Yeah.
I think also so valuable. I think like especially in CrossFit, you kind of see above the knee disregarded quite a lot like that. It's just like a total disconnect where like they know how to push to the knee, whether that's like hips shooting up early or whether they still are pushing to begin with, because the hips wouldn't be going up. Do you know what I mean? But it's like understanding how to hold that back angle or position. But above the knee, like you'll never see like any knees traveling forward or no bar anywhere near the body. And it's just all through like the arms. So good, like high hanging into the even mid thigh and hang, to teach them how to use their legs there. Like we've spoken about this a little bit, but how people try to be like so polarizing on a podcast or on social media or whatever, and they talk about like not pulling the bar high, and then you meet people like Redon that was here, and he was like, fucking continue pulling the bar all the way through. Like obviously like he knows that I'm using my legs, but he's like, continue pulling on the bar like as much as possible. He's putting the bar like
as high as he can,
like as high as he can. And this is a guy that like just was shy of going to the Olympics. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So like, there's obviously some evidence there that it works. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, what's the right cue for the right person in that, or the right drill? Yeah. It's like, you can't just have like one method and just give that to every single person. There's got to be some element of, I get it, like some weightlifting coaches want to have like their way of doing things, which is fine, but that's where like the little pieces of coaching come in, don't they? Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. And just before we move away from the high hang, another thing that can be really, really valuable from it is your ability to train your footwork to be really accurate as well. I love giving people pauses in their receive, whether it is high hang power snatches or high hang power cleans, and forcing them to be accurate with that position, with that receive position, again, because there's less moving parts to it, you can focus on it a bit more. And then like the extension of that is getting people to then ride it down to the bottom position, because your footwork has to be correct for you to be able to squat. Otherwise you're going to be adjusting your receive, which is going to feel like absolute going to feel terrible, and you're going to know for the next time that you don't want to be squatting down in a less than optimal position. So such a good tool, that one of those things that forces you into the desired outcome, which can be good.
Yeah, I think for like people that are newer to begin with, it's like pause, okay, write it down, just fuck it, no space, because their feet are still next to each other. So yeah, it's such a good teaching tool. And I think like consistency with footwork's like really important. I think even with a beginner, or not so much somebody that's maybe intermediate as well, like footwork drills are so important, aren't they? Whether it's I don't know what your opinion is. My stance is slightly different for my snatch than it is to my clean.
In your receive,
in my receive, yeah, a slightly closer heels in my snatch start position.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I have quite like a little bit more of a narrow heel and more of a like toe turn out. It just allows me to sit up a little bit higher in my snatch start position. Right. To my clean. It's like very like,
I'm actually the opposite.
Like minimal. Yeah, this is what I mean, right? Because it's like dependent on like your body as well. And then on my snatch receive would be a little bit wider than my clean also. Yeah. Just to sit in the hole a bit better. But yeah, it takes a long time to find what works for you and consistency in that.
I think that's one of those things when you're fighting for consistency with start positions and you know the rabbit holes associated with that can't be traded for anything that is just consistency over time. Like, yeah, you can be doing all of these different variations to complement other things. You're still banking those reps from your start position, and if you're attentive to that, that's probably the only thing you can do to like fast track your progression with that. Be attentive to how you're setting up every time, what feels good, what doesn't, and then understand it's going to take a long time, like years, not just a few months.
So like you said there, like being attentive to what you're doing and when you're doing it. Like people set up for like an overhead squat and they'll just have their hands more narrow than they would for when they snatch, and their feet will be like more narrow, and they'll just be like starting to descend, and then they're folding forward because they have no space to move into, but they're like might be really mobile and pulling the bar back and just like basically surviving the overhead squat, not hitting probably what would be their bottom position for the snatch as well. And then you would ask them like, is that where you would receive your snatch? And they're like, no. It's like, why the fuck are you doing an overhead squat? Do you know what I mean? Like understanding the carryover and the intention behind why they're doing the movement is so important.
Yeah, for sure. I think that goes for, like you said, so many different movements. But where it can really help is trying to piece together things. Like you said, overhead squat, does this feel like my snatch position? Snatch balance. Am I getting that same feeling of reaching my lockout as I would be when I am performing a snatch? The list kind of goes on, but where you can draw as many connections to various different movements, which, on the surface might be obvious that that's what they're complementing. You can go a step further by digging a little deeper and thinking, okay, I need to think about this external rotation in my elbow shoulder here, XYZ, to complement, that thing. Drawing that connection can really help.
Yeah. I think even in such like the smaller details of a complex, you might have like, say like a snatch high pull from the hang, and then you might have a hang muscle snatch, same position, but you're just finishing overhead. Like everyone will do the hang high pull really nicely, and then when they do the muscle, they just disregard the high pull, and the bar's floating away from them like overhead.
Yeah.
And that's really when you're thinking about like, okay, what is the intention of the complex that I'm doing? Like I'm trying to use my legs to finish my extension and continue pulling the bar to keep it close to the body.
Yeah.
And then like, okay, with the next movement, you're just finishing that exactly the same movement, but you're just finishing like overhead.
Yeah.
But that's like one of the most common ones I always see, like when there's a complex, and I'm like, we'll always mention when I'm like delivering it, like why are we doing this? Like this is the reason why we're doing it. And you should be thinking about that as you take the bar in your hand and set up. But you've probably seen that a lot as well.
Loads, yeah. And I think it's one of those things that when you do finally break through and get it someone to a point where they can execute it really well, it can be so valuable because the timing has to be there. You're starting to introduce something more dynamic where, there is speed involved as well. But at the same time, the potential for those same reasons, there's potential for it to go wrong is there because it automatically implements something where you're moving quickly and it's like, oh no, I'm just got to move fast, and there's that little disconnection almost of what's going on, and people start shooting the bar out forwards and away from them. There's something I've been working on with a lot of people recently, is that same thing. That position is specifically in the high hang muscle snatch of being able to extend with the low body, keep the bar close to the body by keeping the elbows above the wrist for basically as long as possible before then turning over, and how the torso angle relates to that as well. All of those things kind of coming in together can make a huge difference on someone's snatch. But at the same time, if that's something that you just brush over, potentially wasted or even like introduce a bad habit there as well.
Yeah. That's just so valuable. Just like if somebody can listen to that and take it into their own training, no matter what it is, like snatch or clean or jerk, it's like, what's the intention behind the drill that you're doing?
Yeah.
You'll see people trying to do like a tool jerk with like load on the bar, and it's like, can't even fucking do it with your hands.
Yeah.
It's like, let's get some kind of like consistency and intention of like, you're not trying to muscle the bar. Like, you're not trying to push the bar up and then go onto your toes with 50 kilos in your hands. You're like trying to understand how to punch down and receive the bar with timing. Some other things like that might not seem so obvious to begin with. This is like when we were talking in the previous podcast about seeing a gross error or not, but just looking at someone's weight distribution in their feet somebody can be set up in a lovely position, but if the weight distribution in the feet is wrong, the first pull is going to be wrong, and then the second pull we can save a lift and make it, but it can also continue to get worse by having the alternate or the opposing effect, like with the force through the feet. I think that's probably one of the things that you kind of see the most. It will be the weight distribution being wrong, and then the knees coming back, and then there's no knees forward, but there's a lot of hip coming, and then it just makes everything else a little bit harder.
It's so important how weight is distributed throughout the foot, and like a lot of things come into that. Probably first thing, if we're looking at going from the floor or even below the knee, somewhat above the knee as well, is that there's going to be an element of moving backwards in terms of weight distribution in the foot and then coming forwards, but understanding that you've got to ride that weight distribution and not let a disconnection come into play. And that disconnection is normally going to be not letting yourself come onto your heels and not letting yourself come onto your toes too soon. And that kind of leads on to the second thing, which is being able to manage that to a point where you are patient, in where you continue to accelerate past the knees, but you're patient enough to stay on flat feet until that final part of your extension. Like, that sounds like a whole lot of coaching there, because it is, to be honest. But when you get into the detail of it, like, those are the things which do make the difference. And again, something that you see all the time, where people might be reaching a bit of a plateau with their lifting, and there can be an extra few kilos there just by having a stronger connection to the floor. I remember I got into it on Instagram with someone who was trying to call my anecdotal experience out on this, asking for scientific evidence. But quite simply, if you're not driving your whole foot into the floor, like, that is your only connection to the floor. And so if you're only have a partial connection to the floor when you're trying to be as powerful as possible, then you're almost definitely not going to be as powerful as you could be if you did have that full connection to the floor. And anecdotal experience, like, it can show that time and time again.
Yeah,
you don't need a force plate to show
I guess
that.
you could say it's anecdotal, but like, if you just look at gait cycle, it's like you don't run on the outside of your feet and you don't walk on the outside of your feet.
Yeah,
with your big toe off the ground and your arch high up in the air. So it's just basic biomechanics that people are like trying to argue on the internet. It's like, how do you produce force? You need your whole foot to be on the ground. You need some element of pronation and internal rotation, like, to go up the chain to produce force. You wouldn't like ask somebody to go on the outside of their feet, would you? Do you know what I mean? So like, people just want to argue for the sake of it there.
Yeah, exactly that.
But even when you're like that same, like what you went through with the element of like where the foot pressure should be throughout the lift, when you're coaching someone in like a group setting like me, for me the cue would be for them, if they're moving like nicely around the knee, it would be, I just want you to push the ground for longer and keep full contact. I wouldn't necessarily have to tell them, like, you could move their position like forward a little bit, and that's automatically going to do that for them. And like, in that moment, they won't necessarily need to know what I did.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But for them to like understand, oh, okay, I need to push for a bit longer, that will probably help them straight away.
Yeah, definitely.
For those of you that like a little bit more into your weightlifting and understand, it would be a more detailed response for them.
Yeah.
For me, something that's really helped is like going a little bit too far into my toes in my start position. But I know that I work well around the knee. So like, if I go there, as soon as I start pushing, I'm starting to like move to midfoot.
Yeah.
And then I'm more centered when I do extend, and I using like my feet flat on the ground, which has really helped.
Yeah.
When I first started, I'll be like all the way in my heels
Yeah, difficult one. I think that something as stupid as using lifters sometimes and not using lifters sometimes forces you to actually understand what it feels like to then bring it to whatever you're going to use. There's people that are like, oh, you're weightlifting, you should use weightlifters. Like, yeah, whatever. Like, I don't really care. If you want to use one, you want to use the other, I don't really care. But I think you should have exposure to being able to just get the feeling of what it feels like. And you know, on a specific level, I have said to clients before, I'm like, you need to get used to snatching with no lifters whatsoever, because you need that awareness of your received position, and has helped a lot of people, to be honest. One thing I was going to say before we moved on in terms of like how we work around the knee and how that relates to foot pressure. One of the things that is also really common, and I'm sure you've seen it in classes as well, is people coming past the knee, starting to accelerate, but then initiating the clean, more often than not, it's the clean, sometimes the snatch as well, too soon. So it basically glances their lower thigh, and then it's immediately away from the body. And if you were to look at them from the side, you can get people that still fully extend their body from their hip, their knees, their ankles, even might even get to a nice torso angle as well. But they're initiating the lift too soon, and a lot of the time that is the combination of not being patient enough to stay on flat feet for longer, and understanding that you need to lead. Yes, you need to accelerate past the knee, but you need to be patient enough to lead with the chest and get to your proper like finishing point of your extension. So obviously with the clean, that's the upper thigh. With the snatch, that's the hip crease.
Yeah, I've seen that before, and I've seen people show me like their own video from the side, and they're like, "Oh, I'm in a nice position," but like the bar is usually lower. Also, one, yeah, like you said, because they haven't been patient, but two, they have like no tension, like in their upper, say like shoulder girdle, and that's like one really common thing for CrossFitters that use submaximal loads a lot in CrossFit. Like you don't have to be in the perfect or optimal position to start. Do you know what I mean? Because the load is a little bit lighter. But when it comes to like a just weightlifting, specifically, you want to be quite uncomfortable in your start position from the tension, because you often see that either like the early contact or the big kind of hike is like, and that's just like from a lack of tension throughout the body.
And that's the other end of the spectrum, right? The hike will often lead to like exaggerated either hip or like lumbar extension, and then they'll be missing a bit from their legs a lot of the time, which can sometimes still end up in the bar going forwards, or just suboptimal like power exertion.
Yeah, nice. What some things that are really annoying with weightlifting is just getting fundamentals completely correct straight away. So whether that's hook grip, like even the tension or that they're using, like you see like white knuckles and trying to get their thumb to touch their pinky finger on the bar, and like and then obviously the classic is like the front rack position, which before like adding any kind of speed or load should be a given that you've got as your prerequisite. It's like when we talked about continuum before in gymnastics, like in weightlifting there should be something there as well, right? That you should really earn the right to address the bar first.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at basic positions, it's got to be overhead, stacked position overhead with external rotation of elbows and shoulders for the snatch. Same thing for any kind of jerk, which is going to be a bit more of a clean grip. And then front rack position. You can negate the bottom positions by using powers if that's something that's a bit limited. And then maybe even at the extreme, if someone's struggling with like start positions from the floor, it's just like reducing the range of motion so they can get to a sufficient position to allow you to still perform the lift, whether that's with blocks or just using something from the hang.
You can have people with like a massive front squat, like but in their fingertips, and then their clean's like 60 kilos, just because they haven't even bothered to work on the fundamentals of like grip and position through like just the most basic of movements. That comes down to like if they don't have a coach, ownership themselves, but then also like if there's a coach like fucking not allowing people just to do that. Do you know what I mean? There's so many ways that you can get someone to having a nice front rack position, whether it's like from an extreme of like them using straps so they can practice the elbow and the lat position and protraction and hold on to like a strap and then keep working their way down the strap until they can get their fingers on the bar. But at least you're improving like one element instead of like being in the fingertips and having your whole forearm on show and elbow low. But it comes down to like what you hold yourself to as a coach in that sense, right? It's like they're like you could go wider with your hands, and then they're fucking nowhere near where they would be in a clean.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like choosing where you want to go with that person. But those fundamentals get overlooked so much, don't they, there? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think we're also led to believe in achieving those fundamental positions that stretching is going to be the only way to do it. I think if people take a look a little bit deeper into the weightlifting world, like, there is an element of stretching when it comes to improving positions. A lot of work though is loaded with mobility, obviously with like the actual definition of mobility being to be able to, the range at which you can exert strength, and that's something which is completely like personified in Olympic weightlifting. You need a big range of motion, you need to be strong in a big range of motion, and sometimes the approach of just improving these positions is like so sub-maximal in terms of actual intensity, and the force that you are exerting in that position or training yourself to is like non-existent. So that although it might help, like, because flexibility like will contribute, it is quite a low rung on the ladder when it comes to things that you need to improve to ultimately improve that position. So I think that's something to bear in mind for people.
I think that's the classic
as well.
And something that I see all the time is people with their like PVC pipe doing their external rotations and banded warm up, and then they put the bar in their hand and their fucking elbows on their knees still at the bottom of the front squat, or that receive position. It's like, do some meaningful work beforehand, maybe get some load moving through your joints. It's a massive like misconception when people come to mobility here as well. They're like, oh, is this just stretching, this class? No, it's not. It's just actual mobility work, which doesn't look too dissimilar to normal training. Just understanding the premise of like why you're doing it. It's important. I think that's probably the most maybe overlooked part of probably the second. Just like actually doing the skills and drills properly is overlooked, and then actually put an effort into improving your range is overlooked as well.
I think
one thing that's not overlooked is putting 20 kilos on each side of bar.
Making only 5 and 10 kg jumps at any one time. And probably I think if you look at the hierarchy, the next rung down is probably the way that you can improve your ollie lifts with like slightly more basic strength movements where you are purely focusing on good quality positions, and whether it's time under tension or load, and how that could make such a difference. One example I like to use, we spoke about before how much I like the snatch, grip, push, jerk, and pausing in that receive position, and how that exposure to your receive position, unless you're doing that type of work where, whether it's snatch, grip, push, jerks or snatch balances, overhead squats and stuff like that, people aren't really getting a great deal of exposure to what is, for a lot of people, their weakest part of the movement. And it's you can't expect to improve your position alone, whether it is just positional or even the strength of your receive position, from like 5 to 10 suboptimal or poor quality, should we say, full snatches throughout the week. Like, if you're wanting to really improve like what is the weakest part of the chain, not only is it are you going to need to spend more time in that position, but sometimes even a combined approach of more time in the position with more load is really going to take you to the next level. And I think that's something that people maybe underestimate when it comes to the ollie lifts potentially as well. We see.
I mean, it definitely works. Like you saw me do the whole cycle of fucking like bands either side of the barbell with kettlebells hanging off, and I was doing strict press and then overhead squats with massive holds at the end. Then I went back to snatching and my arms are just like bang.
Yeah.
Just familiarity with stabilizing the shoulder in that position.
Yeah, I was exactly the same. Did a full cycle of that, and it made a massive difference. And that's something that I've actually even used to introduce kind of overhead work. So people that have just come back from shoulder injuries, obviously further down the spectrum. I'm not giving people chaos holds from the start, but I'm going for like empty barbell overhead holds for like 3 sets of 40 seconds, and then you're gradually increasing the load of that, gradually introducing some instability, or probably even gradually introducing some like slightly more movement first, maybe some just like barbell only overhead squats, then a bit of instability, then gradually getting them to move into that position a bit more dynamically and hold the receive position. And it's like just this massive long journey that you can go down, which is actually not too dissimilar from where you might take someone who's a bit more advanced. It doesn't have like issues from like a structural standpoint. They just want to build strength and better quality positions. The actual journey is not particularly different. You're just starting at a slightly different point in that same journey.
Yeah, it's the same like continuum kind of thing we've been talking about.
Yeah, we can't get away from it.
Can't get away from it. Probably because it's just so simple. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like start where you need to and move from there.
Yeah.
Depending on where you're at in your journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anything else you want to dig into on?
Well, we can keep working down the positions and talk about kind of common things we see and most worthy things to note about said positions. Obviously, we've spoken about the high hang, we've spoken about the bar traveling around the knee. One thing to touch on before going like from the floor and talking about that, I think, is probably tool variations. I think you mentioned about tool jerks before and how they can get butchered, but how valuable they can be from the perspective of refining that point, which is arguably the most dynamic, where you are finishing your extension and then having to transition to pull under when we're talking about the tool clean and the tool snatch. I think those can be absolutely awesome for refining that third pull and actually having an active upper body in that part of the movement, as well as the torso angle that you have to get to. It's something I've been working on a lot recently with clients, because I think when we first start, it's a case of getting vertical. Everything's just got to translate into vertical power, and providing you're not going forwards, you're not going backwards in your receive position, vertical is good enough for a beginner. But then when we're really starting to push a bit more load, we need to understand that the torso angle helps complement full extension of the lower body, and also helps complement time and space to get underneath the bar. And the thing is, what makes it even more difficult is it's not excessive either. It's a slight torso angle.
Yeah.
And communicating that to people is difficult, but also potentially very valuable when they do get to the grasp.
I mean, that's like one that gets butchered a lot with load, with like the re-dipping and, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
tool jerks where you start on your toes and then jump back onto your flat feet. Oh, that's my personal favourite.
You see it with cleans like all the time. You go tool clean, toes, go. And it's like down, back up.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is not what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, like really nailing like the purpose of that is so important. You'll see people starting to put like plates. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that I seem to remember us talking about a famous 60 kg tool clean from like one of the beginners starting a class we both saw one day, that was like, he was just probably been to the gym before and was just accustomed to 20s on with everything.
Yeah.
But it's a good reminder that for those types of movements, you can be just working with the barbell or 30 kg, even if you're a big strong guy, whatever, like you're going to get so much out of just doing that and doing it well, as opposed to chasing the load on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Are there any bits you want to talk about, like further down or from the floor? I know we've basically
I think from the floor, like we've been through kind of a lot of stuff, but for any coaches listening, just nail down your basics of what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Like stance, grip, position before they've moved anywhere. really your eyes should be like floor, maybe 1 inch below the knee, above the knee, mid-thigh. Your power position, or whatever you want to call it, pocket, position 1. People have loads of different names. And then from that, extension, and then what happens next. Like we often see a loss of tension in the receive and like magnitude of things that can go wrong there as well.
Yeah.
But I think just like starting with the basics and being like stance and grip, is that good? And then from there, you should just be like going through the position and what you can see. Do you know what I mean? Like how does it look from the floor? Bars just traveled up. What's happening? And I think even like if you are a newer coach, or even a coach that wants to get better at weightlifting, it would be maybe go on fucking Google and you can get literally like pictures of a lifter like in all of those positions, and just have a look at them and then try and take that into your coaching and be like, I can see this from here, this from here, this from here, and then start putting lines to the dots.
Yeah.
And just practice it, because you're not going to get it right every time.
And the thing is, it's going to look different because anatomy really does play a big part into various different things in weightlifting, but especially your start position.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, stance, grip are important things, and I'd probably add just like looking at them from the side. Are the crease of the armpits over the bar? That's probably one of my biggest like sort of foundational blocks. I look from a good start position. Now that will change ever so slightly, again depending on the anatomy, but then that's when you need to see if that knock-on effect of potentially their creasy armpits not starting over the bar or being too far over, is it there because it's justified, or is it having like some sort of negative impact later on down the lift?
Yeah, it's interesting, like different methodologies. Like the Chinese method, they don't care about your anatomy so much, from what I've heard as well. Like I've read Chinese weightlifting book in broken English, which is like difficult but good, and to see their perspective. But when I was coaching in Malaysia a few weeks ago, they had learned like Chinese methodology, and one of the people on the course asked like about should the position be different for anatomy, like you mentioned, because like in their methodology it was like this is where you have to be, this is where everything needs to be, and it's like their way or nothing.
The thing which I would caveat that with is that the methodology is developed by the anatomy that they have, in that if you have the wrong anatomy in China, you're probably not supposed to be weightlifting. You're supposed to be doing whatever fucking else you're assigned to.
Plumbing.
Yeah. You got the anatomy of a plumber, mate.
Yeah.
So it's not designed to be accessible there, is it? It's designed for Olympians, and the athletes are chosen on their anatomy to come and do this.
Come and do that.
Yeah.
Because and then the guy was like going in, and I was like, mate, people get scouted at like 5 years old to go to like a weightlifting camp, and then depending on their growth, they're either in or they're out, and the methodology just stays the same. So it was like interesting for an interesting question, but like the answer was obviously like the position is going to be different depending on who you're coach. It was interesting. There was like a couple of guys from Malaysia that were fucking massive, like 6'5", and I was like, just don't see that very often. Everyone else over there was tiny. Because when me and Will walked in, they were like, you two are massive, and I'm not very tall either. But I felt tall there.
Yeah, nice.
Good
reason to
2
go
days
back.
of a weekend.
Yeah, I have heard as well something which I do feel is a little bit confined to maybe to anatomy, and I heard someone say that your snatch start position, you're essentially trying to get to your receive position, and I can understand how if your anatomy complements that might make sense, but you try and get a 6 foot plus guy to do that, that's very, very difficult. Sometimes it goes the other way in that tall people do really need to sit into things, but there's so much nuance in between those two things. Like I think that's just such a sweeping statement that that tells me that the anatomy of people that you've coached has been one way, and you're not really thought about wider demographics there, because if you've seen the way different people move, even elite lifters, their start position is nothing like their perceived position.
Yeah, literally nothing like it. Yeah, nice, good little weightlifting chat.
Yeah,
be a good one for the listeners, I think, with weightlifting, and just a bit of an insight into what we're thinking about when we're looking at stuff and coaching. Because I think in functional fitness gyms, it gets butchered a lot. And it's not necessarily the people in the class's fault. It's often like a lack of confidence from the coach in their ability to coach it as well, to a level, or to the ability level in the class of like knowing where to go. They might just always be going from the floor.
Yeah.
And there's fucking 10 million things that can go wrong from there.
Yeah. I mean, you get a lot of gyms which are like, oh, we just do cleans. Like, we don't do snatches. Like, fair enough, but do you do those well? There's a lot to go wrong with the clean as well.
Yeah. And that's the question. It's like, why? Like, why are you doing cleans instead of snatches?
Yeah. It's like, it's slightly less demanding in terms of the overhead position, but still incredibly technical.
But if anything, there's more snatch accessories to improve the position overhead.
It's true, yeah.
Than there is in the clean. You've got a zombie squat and a front squat to improve your, say, like your front rack position.
Yeah.
Which people are like here anyway when you see the videos. And
you've also got an elevated level of potential intensity for someone who's not as proficient. If you've got like somewhat of a deadlift and somewhat of a front squat, like you'll be able to chuck some weight up one way or another.
Yeah. Therefore,
the potential risk is a bit higher.
Yeah. Yeah. But people don't think like that.
No.
Cool. We'll get these episodes out sharply for you listeners. Thanks once again for listening in. Please subscribe. I've had a few more subscribers recently, and a few people
good to see, yeah,
in and around the gym saying congratulations on your podcast.
Like, cheers, been doing it for 2 years. Maybe longer, actually.
Yeah. Sure. Now we appreciate it, and like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Goodbye.